If you want to create shirring, like we see here in my picture on my desktop, I've added a sleeve here that has a little bit of shirring detail. When we do this, when we're sewing, we would see how many lines of stitching there are. So I see 1, 2, 3, 4 lines of stitching here. And you would stitch this using elastic thread in your bobbin. And when you do all that sewing in parallel lines and then do a little bit of steaming, it shrinks it up really nicely and creates this shirring effect. In this case, you can see that they've offset that sewing line by maybe 1.5 inches off of the sleeve hem. So we can do something similar to that. We're going to first do that by removing my elasticity at the hem. So I'm going to go in and uncheck that. And now to create these extra lines of sewing, I do need to add some offset lines. So my first offset line is going to be internal. I'm going to create, let's see. I'm just going to create one to start off with, and I'm going to make it 2 inches from the edge. Oops, as a retraction. I'm in the wrong function here. Let's go back to the right function. I'm going to right click and do offset as internal line. That might help things out. I'm going to make one offset. Actually, you know what? I'm going to try something new. We're going to do 4 offsets, and I'm going to have them be different. So the first offset, I'm going to make 2 inches from the edge, right? And all of the others, I'm going to make 0.25. So I can toggle that and make it a little bit different. I'm going to have them have all 4 be 0.25 or 1/4 inch away from each other, but the first one be 1 inch from the other. So hopefully you saw that when I went in, I clicked offset as internal line, and I actually determined the individual distance of all those offset lines. From there, what I can do now is highlight all of those lines. I need to go close with my shift key, and I'm going to select elastic and shirring. So shirring, when you hit that button, you might think it hasn't worked. It just takes a little while. So don't be impatient there. Okay. And I am going to change the elasticity of that. So I want my ratio or my segment length to be a little bit more like it was before. So I'm going to bring this down. I'm going to use the ratio this time to make it a 50% ratio because all those segments are slightly different lengths. I'm going to hit OK. So it's going to treat all the line lengths individually, making them all 50% ratio. And now I'm going to go into my 3D window to see the effect once I simulate. So I should release this elasticity there. Okay. And so you can see it gives that shirring effect with the extra special gathers, very similar to what we see here. If you want that to be even more effective, you can then, while the lines are highlighted, you can select top stitching. So typically what you do is do this in 2D window. All of them are selected. I'm going to top stitch them all. And I'm going to go into my top stitch function here and change some of the parameters. I'm going to first change the SPI length to something smaller. Let's go 8. I'm going to change my text to 100, which is much thicker thread. It's going to let me. And the next thing I'm going to change is the color. So the color helps it become more visible. I'm going to change it to something slightly darker than what I've got. Okay, and now that all that's done, I'm going to simulate again. Remember, simulating makes it not appear, and when you stop simulating, you should be able to see it. But I do not see my thread. So let's try that again. I'm going to add top stitching again. This time I'm going to highlight them. There we are, now I can see it. And there we have our top stitching there. If you feel like you need the shirring to be a little bit more drawn in, a little bit higher elasticity, you can select all those lines again and change the ratio. So I'm going to make that a little bit tighter. So here, instead of a ratio of 50, I'm going to make it 30. See what effect that has. Okay, so remember, We have to simulate it and then unsimulate it to see our stitching line again. So it's a little bit tighter. One thing I want to make sure we do is, I can't see the seams right now, but if I click on it, you can see the yellow seams are there and my stitching's a little bit offset. So one thing you might want to change in your top stitching property here, click on this, is to make sure that your top stitching is set for, should be set for 0 spacing. But that's one of the things you have to also change is the spacing. The default is 1/8 or something like that. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm up here. Let's do it. 0 there. So offset is 0. And again, stop simulation to see. And I can see now that this top stitching is landing directly on my segment lines. Okay, so there's our sleeve with shirring.